Last Sunday, we discussed the subject of yogi based on the three questions. What is a yogi? And what are the qualities a yogi is to possess? And the benefits or objectives of such a yogi who possesses these kinds of qualities one by one from the theoretical and practical aspects. Sayadaw also mentioned the three stages of energy: virya, courageous effort; initial launching energy, the stepped up, boosted energy in order to overcome sluggishness; and finally, the progressive energy or energy of persistence until one realizes the goal of the practice. To put it down to practice, such a yogi is to note every arising object, beginning with the main object, not to lose the focus, not to miss the mindfulness, in order to develop this momentary concentration, khanika samadhi, and slowly embarking on the progressive series of insight. In order to achieve that, the yogi has to be alert, exert energy, courageous effort, every second, every moment of the practice, continuously. If one exerts energy in this way, then one is said to have come to possess this kind of quality. If one possesses a certain amount of quality, then one is a yogi to that extent. And if one possesses much or considerable amount of this quality of energy, then one is a yogi to that extent. And if one fully possesses this kind of quality, that is heroic energy, then one becomes full or complete yogi. So in this way, Sayadaw has explained the kinds of yogis. Today, he would like to continue to talk about the activities of the yogis, the goal of the yogis, that is, the path to liberation, or the path of liberation for such a yogi, and the obstacles to that path. In this way, the two sections, the path to liberation, or the outlet for liberation, outlet for the yogis, and the obstacles, things which block these outlets. So these are the two kinds which will be explained today. Kinds of expressions, as the topic is divided into two. It's of two parts, Niyana and Niyanavarana. Niyana means path to liberation, an outlet for the yogis to be liberated. From where should one be liberated? From bondage, to be free from the bondage. What is the bondage? The bondage is suffering. The nearest bondage or suffering is sensual pleasures. As sentient beings, most people are zealous for sense objects, desire to enjoy the sense objects, such as wishing to enjoy pleasant visible object and so on. When they get it, they don't want to let go. They will cling to them, wishing to enjoy better and better ones, and the best ones, if possible. Later, they become attached to these sense objects. They cling to them, not wishing to let go of them. Thus, they become the servants. They are said to be under bondage. They become the servants to these sense pleasures. Leaving the mind unrestrained about these sense objects, they cling to them, yielding to sense objects. Of course, by yielding to sense objects, they will enjoy sense pleasures. But they think that they are real ones. which they can enjoy in the human world until they get stuck to them at last, like the story of honey and ants meeting perilous pleasures, enjoying perilous pleasures, dangerous pleasures, fatal at times. Therefore, they cling to these sense of pleasures, thinking that they are the real ones. This is the enormous, huge bondage. So, one has got to find suitable methods to be free from these enormous bondage, to be free from these bondage, from sufferings. So one has to find the means in order to find an outlet or to be liberated from suffering. This is called Niyana, in the essence of Niyana, path to liberation, an outlet to be liberated, and the reverse of that. That means there are states which block these outlets, obstacles to this path of liberation, and they are known as Niyana Varana or simply Avarana. They are the blocks, they block the outlet, they are the obstacles to the path. There are 8 Niyanas, 8 means of liberation, or 8 outlets or pathways to liberation, and 8 Avaranas, 8 obstacles to the path or to the outlets, the obstacles which block the path. As for Niyana, outlets or path to liberation, they are of 8 kinds. The first one is Nekkhamma, rendered as renunciation. Second one is Abhyabhada, non-ill will. Third one is Aloka Sanya, perception of light, or mindfulness in a vigorous manner. Fourthly, Avekepa, non-distraction. The fifth one is Dhamma Vavotana, resolution of good and bad, or ability to distinguish between what is kusala and what is akusala. The sixth one is Jnana, knowledge of the realities of mind and body, such as the discernment of mind and body and the cause and effect relationship. The seventh one is Pamojja, delight. And the eighth one is Kusala Dhamma, blameless deeds. And the opposite states, that is, the obstacles which block these outlets, avaranas, are of 8, and they are: the first one is Kamachanda, zeal for sense desires, sense pleasure, sense objects. Vyabhada, ill will. And third one is Tinamaida, sloth and torpor, sluggishness. Fourth one is Audecha, distraction. The fifth one is Vichikecha, uncertainty. The sixth one is Avijja, ignorance. And the seventh obstacle is Arati, non-delight in the practice of the Dhamma. And the eighth one is Akusala Dhamma, blameworthy deeds or unwholesome deeds. So these will be explained in pairs. So these will be explained in pairs: Niyana and Niyana Varana, path to liberation or outlets, and obstacles to these outlets or the path to liberation. Now the first pair is Nekkhamma and Kamachanda. Nekkhamma rendered in the text as Pabijja, renunciation, Pabijjam, and Patamamja, Pabijja, renunciation, Patamajjana, first jhana, Nibbana, and Vipassana, and Kusala, that means wholesomeness or wholesome deeds. So the this will be, although the renderings are given as such in respect of Nekkhamma, explanation will be will be concerned with the practical aspects which concern the practitioners in the immediate sense. So we have this one rendering of Nekkhamma as Pabbajja. In essence, in practice, becoming a monk, nun, or yogi. This is the easiest way of rendering, or easier way of rendering this expression of Pabbajja. The implied meaning as this. Pa is given as the renunciation from worldly matters, renouncing one's worldly matters, renouncing the world, or at least for the time being, or permanently, in the case maybe. And Vajja is going and staying in a center, in a place where one can extinguish the fires of kilesas, either a monastery or a center where, in the form of yogi or monk, to extinguish these, wherever one can practice to extinguish these fires of kilesas. So that begins Nekkhamma, renunciation. Renunciation begins at this point. One leaves behind all one's matters, affairs, business affairs, educational affairs, domestic affairs, sensual pleasures, and so on, at the time of one's practice, as though they don't concern the practitioner, they don't concern the yogi or the monk. So one leaves behind these things totally for 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, and so on, as the case may be. And this is given by the expression Pa of Pabbajja. And Vajja means going and staying in a place, in the center or monastery, in the form of, in one form, in one appearance. Appearance as yogi and so on. So where do they go? As given by the expression asama, a place where one can extinguish the fires of kilesa, such as raga, dosa, moha. Nowadays you might call it Dhamma center or Vipassana center or meditation center. These are the places where one can extinguish the fires of raga, dosa and moha in the appearance of a yogi, monk, nun and so on. And what is the motivation? What is the motive of coming to such place? The motive is to overcome and extinguish the kilesas, raga, dosa, moha, which are the causes of human suffering. It's a not ordinary practice, ordinary way of extinguishing. It is an intensive way of extinguishing, intensive method, intensive practice in order to extinguish, overcome these fires of kilesas. This is given by this expression Pabbajja. Most people have to endure these sufferings, such as the fire of lust burns, they are ablaze with the fire of craving when it comes to lustful objects, desirable objects, and they are unable to extinguish these fires, this kind of fire. And when they meet undesirable objects, and they are ablaze with this dosa fire, and they are unable to, they are at a loss to extinguish such fire, leading to all sorts of immoral deeds. And if they are not clear-cut or hazy or confused about the events, about the truth of the matter, they are said to be overwhelmed or ablaze with the fire of moha, delusion. And this will be always within the minds of the yogis, in the minds of the people. So they all will lead to unwholesome deeds, harming oneself and others. So if one commits unwholesome deeds, one is bound to reap unwholesome benefits, unwholesome results. That means suffering as a result of these impurities, raga, dosa and moha, craving, aversion and delusion. They are the root cause or root causes of human suffering. If one ponders, one is bound to realize that they are the culprits. If one detests suffering, if one does not like to endure suffering, all one has got to do is to extinguish these causative fires of raga, dosa and moha. This is very important. When ordinary fire takes place, people do all sorts of preventive measures or measures to extinguish them with all sorts of equipment, and if they cannot extinguish the fire, they escape from the fire or call the fire brigade to extinguish the fire. This is about the ordinary real fire. They are very careful about real fire. However, they are very careless about these kilesa fires or raga, dosa, moha, which are ablaze all the time, and they are not mindful, they are not careful, they do not remember to extinguish these kinds of fires, and if they are asked to do it, they will give all sorts of excuses to avoid, to evade, to extinguish these fires of raga, dosa and moha. Therefore, these unwholesome roots are the causes for human suffering. While they are occurring, they will stain the mind, and in the future also, one is bound to endure suffering. So it is very important to extinguish these fires of kilesas. If one is enjoying human pleasures, worldly pleasures, they are like playing with fire. Of course, in the beginning they will not be aware of the nature of this fire, that they are very hot and they can burn you. But later on, being burned by these, ablaze with these fire of kilesas, they become weak, and then they cannot do anything. So they will find that it is very hot, extremely hot, and very difficult to extinguish. And the only method to extinguish the fire of kilesas is, in short, they practice the way of mindfulness, satipatthana, or they practice of the three trainings: sila, samadhi, panya, morality, concentration, and wisdom. So with these, one must extinguish the fire of kilesas. So when one is extinguishing the fire of kilesas, one has got to practice fully, intensively, by going to a center or to a monastery, and in the form of yogi or monks or nuns. If one is involved in the human affairs, worldly affairs, then one will not be able to devote one's time on the practice to extinguish the fire. So only when one leaves behind, renounce, at least for the time being, to practice, to undertake this noble practice of sila, samadhi, panya, will one be able to extinguish the fire of kilesas. So this is given by this niyana, nekkhamma, the renunciation. The motivation of the yogis is to extinguish the fire of kilesas. So one comes to the center as a monk or yogi, and one comes to this the place, monastery or center, in order to deal with the fire of kilesas. But just coming is not enough. One must accomplish one's objective. that is the practice of the three trainings, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, then only one will be able to accomplish one's objectives. Then only one will be able to extinguish the three grades of fire, or kilesas, namely the gross form of kilesa, the medium form, and the refined forms of these negative emotions. Then one will not be just by appearance, one will be by practice. One is not a yogi by appearance, one is not a monk by appearance, one becomes a yogi or a monk or a nun by practice. Then one will be in keeping with this expression pabbajja or nekkhamma. This is the implied meaning of nekkhamma. So just the appearance is not enough. One has got to practice. Then only one will be practicing in the spirit of or living up to this expression nekkhamma or pabbajja. So one must practice to become a real yogi or real monk. So the practice is given as the instruction, therefore the instruction is given to observe the immediately arising object, not to miss the mindfulness, not to lose one's focus, and to note with focused attention, to strike with pinpoint precision by aiming and the application of energy, so that there will arise this concentration in something like jhana. This is avarana. Then the one will be able to overcome this avarana, that is the zeal for sense desires. One will be free from sense desires. So in this way one's mind will become serene, calm and stable. There will arise this delight in the practice, rapturous feeling, pleasurable feeling, and the mind becomes concentrated, especially at the stage of samasana jnana, that is reflective knowledge by verification or verified knowledge of comprehension. One will be able to become concentrated with the jhana, with the 5 jhanic factors, namely vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekaggata. These are the 5 jhanic factors. So the one is said to have reached the concentration like the first jhana. So then one is said to have moved or changed from sensual pleasures to outlet, freedom from sensual pleasures. This is the outlet. This is the path to liberation. Freedom from sensual pleasures. Therefore, one realizes one is able to concentrate in something like the first jhana. Then one is said to be freed from or liberated from this obstacle to the path, obstacle to the outlet, namely kamacchanda, zeal for sense pleasures. And this is nekkhamma, renunciation. To put it down to practice, yogis are noting when they are sitting, paying attention to the abdomen and focusing their attention and noting, following the main object of rising and falling with the application of aiming. This is vitakka, one of the jhanic factor, and as much as one aims, one is bound to strike the object with pinpoint precision. This is jhanic, the form of jhanic, the sense of jhana. As much as one aims, as much as one aims one's noting mind towards the object of observation, one is bound to rub. This is the rubbing aspect of mindfulness. One is bound to strike or hit or rub the object of observation. This is the second factor of jhana, namely vichara. So every time one aims one's noting mind, one's consciousness or mind is bound to rub or stick to the object of observation. Then one will become satisfied with one practice. There will be rapturous feeling, and one will be delighted, one will be satisfied, knowing that one is not like before. One has advanced, one has become delighted in the practice. This is piti, especially at the stage of samasana jnana, verified knowledge of comprehension. One comes to realize these characteristics, individual characteristics as well as common characteristics. So in this way, one becomes satisfied, especially if one is able to overcome unbearable sensations. This piti arises, and as much as piti arises, this will lead to pleasurable feeling, sukha, and there will be calmness and tranquility and pleasure in both body and mind. This is the practical aspect. This can be verified with one's own experience, and also one will be able to cultivate this Khanika Samadhi, momentary concentration. So in this way, one realizes the first vipassana jhana. Then one becomes free from the bondage of these sense desires. There will be no zeal for sense objects. This is the real nekama renunciation. In this way, if there is the kamachanda, sense desires, if sense desires have no chance of arising in one stream of consciousness, one becomes free from lobha, greed, which also is tanha, craving or attachment. One is free from attachment or lobha, greed. So originally or initially also one comes to the center or to the monastery, leaving behind all worldly attachments in order to extinguish the fire of kamachanda or lobha. So that is the objective. When one practices in this way, one is able to accomplish one's objective. Of course, during the practice, during the development of vipassana jnana, during the practice of insight, one is able to extinguish the fire of kamachanda, sense desires. So during the vipassana jhana, one is said to be extinguishing the fire of kamachanda. This is nibbana. Nibbana comes from the expression vana. Vana means attachment or tanha, and ni means freedom from attachment. So in this way, one is realizing the momentary freedom from attachments, tathanga nibbana. This is also is nekama. So as one is cultivating this insight knowledge, vipassana jnana, such as the discernment of mind and body, the cause effect relationship, and the comprehension of the universal characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and selflessness or impersonality of the psychophysical phenomena. This is cultivating vipassana jnana, insight knowledge. At this moment, seeing the impermanent nature of all events, one is free from pride or conceit, mana, and whatever is impermanent cannot be satisfactory. Seeing the unsatisfactory nature of all events, all experiences, one is free from attachment, tatna. And what is impermanent and unsatisfactory cannot be self, cannot be controllable, cannot be manageable. They are no self or soul, no personal entity, the substantial core in the experiences. So that is anatta, there's no atta. So one is free from the view of self or soul. This also is nekama renunciation. So with the cultivation of insight knowledge, one is freed from the impurities such as kamachanda or sense desires. So at the moment of insight knowledge, one is free from impurities, including this kamachanda, sense desires. This is developing wholesome deeds, kusala, and this is nekama renunciation. Therefore, from this expression renunciation, one is said to have renounced the worldly matters, worldly belongings, worldly affairs, and have come to the retreat, to the center or monastery in the form of yogi or monks or nun in order to extinguish the fire of kilesas. This is nekama renunciation. And realizing this first vipassana jhana. One is also practicing vipassana. So one is free from kamacchana tanha. So one is free from the bondage of this craving or zeal for sense desires. This is also nekkhamma. This is also wholesome deeds. So they are all nekkhamma. So this nekkhamma is given in the text as alobha, all the kusala deeds, wholesome deeds, which arise in one stream of consciousness in the form of non-greed, are given as nekkhamma. In practice, when the yogis are practicing this way of mindfulness, they are said to be renouncing, they are said to be accomplishing this objective of nekkhamma. Yep, so we'll stop here for the evening. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.